Welcome back to another segment of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons. Today I'm going to be speaking about episode 5 from season 8, The Innocents. The Innocents was written by Juliet Packer and directed by Gwen Arner. The two storylines in this episode, one is that Olivia discovers that at the Pickett's plant that all of the working moms have no options for daycare. Many of them don't. So the children are just hanging out in the parking lot and potentially in danger and just unsupervised. So feeling the need for these children to be cared for, Olivia decides to try to open basically a day nursery for the children. The other storyline is that Ike and Cora-Beth's anniversary is coming up. And Cora-Beth would like there to be something romantic, and Elizabeth and Amy decide that they will make arrangements for a romantic evening for the two of them, which includes the fact that Cora-Beth would love to go dancing. Ike can't dance, so they decide that they're going to help teach Ike to dance. Well, basically, they end up recruiting Rose to teach Ike to dance. Mary Ellen didn't seem to be particularly involved in much of what was going on, so maybe she's off at work up in the mountains. I don't know. We saw John Curtis, but we didn't see much of Mary Ellen, and there was no explanation of which job she was working on, because at Pickett's we didn't see her, and perhaps she was back up in the mountains making rounds. But I am in this very first scene in the kitchen where I noted this was a new dress that I had not had in previous seasons, and I really liked it. So I also really loved the dress that Michael was wearing. It was really soft, sort of peach color that I thought was very flattering on her. And then poor Cindy, who's very pregnant, and Ben doesn't want her doing anything. He doesn't want her lifting anything. He doesn't want her going up the stairs. He's just going through a very overprotective phase. And Olivia says John was kind of the same way with her. And I wondered how often in television we see that, where there's a woman who's pregnant and the husband is just overly concerned about everything they're doing. And does that happen as much in real life, or is this just kind of a trope that we see a lot in television? This instigating scene where two kids are outside Ike's and run like right in front of the car that Olivia's driving was interesting. I mean, this is what sets forward this story about the kids and Olivia wanting to care for them so they're safe. How the kids got all the way to Ike's, I guess it's supposed to be in reasonable distance from the plant or something. I'm not sure how that's supposed to have worked logistically, because Olivia then is going to drive them back to where their parents are at Pickett's. But the timing of this, I'm sure that it wasn't as close to the children as it sort of seems, but obviously it would have been done with a lot of precaution to make sure there was no actual danger to these children who had to run out in front of this moving car. And the car probably wasn't moving very fast at the time they actually coordinated this. A lot of these types of things end up being put together in the editing. Some of you have commented on this particular scene, and it struck me also where Cora-Beth is wearing this very lovely dress with like cherries on it. And she's like, Ike, do you recognize this? And, does this make you think of anything? And she says it's the dress that she was wearing when Ike proposed to her. Now, we all know darn well that he proposed in the Matchmaker episode, where Cora-Beth was still a little on the frumpy side and was wearing nothing remotely like this dress.
Cora-Beth, what's wrong?
What happened?
Ike asked me to marry him, and I said yes.
So I'm not quite sure why. I guess they just thought it was enough seasons forward that nobody would remember what she was wearing when she was actually proposed to. But of course, we can watch these episodes back to back in the same day and go, of course, that is not the same dress. Olivia talks with JD at Pickett's and tries to get him to take some responsibility for these children. And, isn't there some space they could be? And he said, no, all available spaces are being used, which is where she then gets the idea that she'll start her sort of day nursery at home. So she comes back home. She goes into the mill where John is and lets him know what her new job is. And he's like, "You sure you want to do this?" And she's all excited about having these children around the house, and having something that she feels is her way of contributing to the war effort. There's a fair bit of extra activity because of all these children. At one point, Jeffrey is playing catch with one of the boys in the house. Another kid is plunking on the piano, and Olivia has a baby in her lap, and John comes downstairs just as a ball is tossed that he catches. Again, in an editing thing, it looks like, oh, wow, that was great timing, but you're actually on a close-up of Ralph at the time he catches the ball, so he would have stepped into where his mark was, and somebody would have tossed the ball to him that he could have easily caught then. But it's just kind of fun, and he goes over and he stops the kid from playing the piano, and then they're outside, and at some point she's reading stories to them or making up stories. She's playing jump rope with them and things like that. She says it's great practice for Cindy to get more comfortable, sort of dealing with a lot of children before they have their own baby. And she does get a lot more comfort with it. But unfortunately, one of the boys runs off and gets into the mill, turns on the saw. John comes, and finds the door open. And so that kind of puts an end to it because for safety reasons, he says, the children can't be around there because there's equipment and somebody could get hurt. And, how horrible that would be. So Olivia is forced to give up running the daycare at her house, which she's very sad about. Olivia continues to search for an alternate location. She calls around. The school isn't an option. The church isn't an option. And then she comes across this tavern. JD has this space that he has created as a tavern for the workers, for the men. And so Olivia decides, John gives her the idea that it would take like an army to change JD's mind. And so she says she thinks she has that. So John comes with them, they gather up all the children, and they march into this tavern, and Olivia says that that's going to be their new place for the children. And JD, of course, is like, "No, this is ridiculous. That's not going to happen." And there are several men in there at the time. Well, then the workers kind of come in and face off against JD. And he says, "I'm throwing you all out." And he asks one of the fathers, one of the workers, to start escorting them out. And that father goes over, picks up his daughter, and sits down with her in his lap. So basically, even the men have now sided with Olivia in recognizing that the children do need a safe place. And so Olivia negotiates times where during the day, when the tavern isn't really being used, that she can use it for the children, and they negotiate about no beer bottles and no crayons on the wall and all those sorts of things, but they now have a space. So this is another thing, though, that I don't know that we heard much about it after this episode. I don't think we saw Olivia on an ongoing basis there taking care of the children, so maybe she recruited other people, and who knows, but it was a lovely sentiment, and we can imagine going forward that these children have a place that is safe and where they can be cared for during the day. Meanwhile, Amy and Elizabeth's plan to teach Ike to dance. They have a book about dancing, and they're going to, get some white paper, and they're going to trace out Ike's feet, and they're going to have him follow the steps on the paper. Well, Rose comes in and says that she has all this dance history, that she and a beau of hers used to dance all the time, and that she will teach Ike. So that proceeds forward where they have Ike come over, and there's a series of scenes where Rose starts teaching Ike to dance, and some cute little scenes, and Ike gets quite good pretty fast. Well, Rose has had a lace hanky that had a cheap French perfume. It ends up in Ike's pocket, and Corbeth ends up finding it. So he's been disappearing every day on errands. She gets suspicious. She thinks that he has another woman. So as they are basically on the day of the anniversary, Amy and Elizabeth have set up in the canteen, because it's a day when that's closed, they've set up a romantic dinner with candlelight and music, and Ike goes in and finds Corbeth packing. She's leaving him because he's been cheating on her. So he says, all right, well, you go tell Amy what's happening. And she's in the canteen. So Corbeth goes in to make this announcement, and it's like, happy anniversary. And so she is very overwhelmed and touched that they went through all of this to create this wonderful anniversary. And they do end it with her putting a rose in her mouth, and they start to dance the tango together. So it is just a really sweet sort of subplot in this episode. We had the usual cast of characters in this episode, including Joe and Ronnie Claire once more as Ike and Corbeth, Peggy as Rose, Leslie Winston as Cindy, Michael and Marshall Reed as John Curtis, and Martha Nix and Keith Mitchell as Serena and Jeffrey. This was during that season when they were there. Louis Arquette back as J.D. Pickett, Rachel Longacre back as Amy Godsey, and then our guest actors in this, Carrie Shear played Mrs. Cass, the mother of little Anna May, and Carrie at this moment in time was actually the second wife of Ralph Waite, so they were married for a number of years, and this was during the time that they were married. She was also the daughter of Pearl Shear, who played Zuleika Dunbar. Charles Parks played Mr. Swanson. He did a lot of guest starring roles, including one on Little House on the Prairie. Tony Latour played Charlie, and he played Harvey Lacey Jr. in Cagney and Lacey, and then was also an Elvis impersonator. Jason Semmeling was Elwin. Danny Gellis was Rob, and he was in Knots Landing as Jason Avery. Kimberly Woodward played Little Bernice, and she also did an episode of Little House and Eight is Enough, and another episode of The Waltons. She was in the episode The Idol as Lauren. Jennifer Moscow was Anna May, and Gordon Hodgins, who was one of our regular stand-ins, he was there all the time as a stand-in. He was Mr. Miller. That is an overview of the episode The Innocents from season 8. If you enjoy these segments, please do hit like and subscribe so you can find out when I'm posting a next episode. I will be back with more behind the scenes of the Waltons, more about episodes, more questions with an Ask Judy, and hopefully more special guests. See you next time. Thanks for watching.